When I was told to go to the palace, I came to my senses, Your Highness, Your Highness. I grabbed the Crown Prince, who snatched my arm in a hurry. He looked back at me with a fierce frown. What are you doing? You don't get up fast. Your Highness, please calm down, and sit down, it's no big deal. I slowly calmed the Crown Prince. Even if I wasn't stressed out, Penelope was just as sensitive, as she had a violent temperament. But what I said to calm him down seemed to have backfired. Then what's the big deal with the princess? The Crown Prince squinted his eyes and said with a cold voice, Is it really a big deal for you if you starve yourself and bury yourself in the ground? Don't exaggerate, this won't kill me, and even so, what does it matter to you? An indifferent voice leaked out. I was really asking because I was curious. Why is he so angry about I losing some weight after proposing a political marriage without any emotions until recently? As if he loves me. Love, don't you think that's a naive word that doesn't suit us? What's wrong with you? That day the words he said were engraved and floated around in my head. 76% of favorability was shown like a sign of affection, not love. System, would you like to check the favorability of Callisto? 4 million gold. Fame 200. I stared blankly at the white square window that had been floating in the air for a while and slowly took off the wrist that was caught by him. Whether I'm really abused as an adopted princess, or whether I starve or lose weight because of it, it has nothing to do with Your Highness. It's not a big deal. When I took my hand off of him completely, the system window finally disappeared. Of course, if I don't act like I do now and I'll be more affectionate as I did with the Clies, maybe I'll reach the 100% and hear what I want to hear, but I don't have time, so both the situation and the confirmation of his favorability were useless. I knew the Crown Prince would get angry, pointing out my rude tone. But he stared at me in silence, and soon he opened his mouth and said quietly, Is it really bad to worry for someone you care about? His expression was calm, but I could feel the remnants of anger barely holding back from his exhaling breath. But I still asked insensitively, Why do you worry about me, princess? What kind of relationship do we have right now? I answered indifferently to the increasingly cold voice of the Crown Prince as a warning. There's too long distance between us, the Crown Prince answered in a brisk manner. I've proposed to you, so we're going to be officially engaged. When I got back, I thought about what you said then. His reticent utterances were full of unknowable conviction. I didn't know where his conviction came from. This was an opportunity anyway. I whispered something I had just missed. No matter how much I think about it, I can only refuse your offer. My answer is no, Your Highness. This is driving me crazy. The Crown Prince laughed as if he was bewildered and raised his hand to rub his face. I knew that our conversation was a little off, but I pretended not to know. It was just a good thing you say this before the coming-of-age ceremony. The Crown Prince, who had been rubbing his face for a while, soon lowered his hand and looked back at me. His eyes were a little reddish. Princess, we were just talking about your eating and health. Do we have to bring that up in this situation? I was going to tell you this. Why give me a reason? The Crown Prince irritatedly cut off my words and moved his body. He sat down again across from me. Finally, it seemed that I had a chance to be heard out. For your information, it's almost like killing me for a reason like that, princess. I don't understand any of that anymore, he suddenly warned in a low voice. I'd given you plenty of opportunities, the chance to get revenge on me. It was like a madman, but it was me who didn't give him a chance to cut his throat anyway. It was a very convenient reason, but now it didn't matter. I nodded and opened my mouth. That's not the reason then, because you and I are moving in different directions, and we are not compatible with each other's wishes. Different directions compatible? I don't think you've ever uttered such a word that day. The Crown Prince sighed deeply as if he were dumbfounded by my words. Tapping on the table, he asked, suddenly furrowing his forehead, Is it so hard to say that we're going to get married according to our family's arrangement, and that we're going to get along with each other? The words were not difficult, the situation was just difficult. When I did not answer, he whispered in a soothing voice, I didn't ask you to be Crown Princess, I suggested you to be a partner to share my life with me. It would be a better choice than a political marriage with a stranger. How can you be so sure? I am more handsome. He shook his head arrogantly. I was in a state of complex thoughts. But at that moment I burst into laughter. Are you laughing? Callisto glared at me. But I couldn't stop my laughter. If I had been a real Penelope, if I had been a noble woman born and raised here, perhaps his words would have been so sweet, but it wasn't that case, Your Highness. I finally opened my mouth with a big smile. First of all, as you described me, title The Ugly Duckling of the Duke didn't suited me. He frowned at my rather incoherent remark. What are you talking about? The real princess of the house came back. The real princess, the real daughter of the Duke. At my reply he only wriggled his chin once, but there was no sign of much surprise. You knew about it. I've been told by Cedric that the atmosphere of the duchy is unusual. I thought it was a fake, but it was real, he asked back abruptly as he confessed the news he had learned. But what the hell does that have to do with your relationship with me? I'm a fake, I added with a shrug. Fake which is supposed to leave when the real daughter appears. Where in the world does that thing happens? Callisto looked puzzled. You have been living in a lady's position for 6 years. And now that his own daughter has appeared, the Duke is going to kick you out, so you're starving without food. It's not like that, Your Highness. Please stop. If someone heard, they'd really think that I am starving. Suddenly he shut his mouth. The look of compassion made me feel bad. I was speaking with a frown on my forehead. As long as I'm engaged to you in this condition, it won't do you much good, Your Highness. Because for nobles there's no reason to treat the fake much better than you do for the real one. Blood is much thicker than water anyway. You didn't listen to me then. Until then, the Crown Prince, who had kept his mouth shut and listened to me, gave me sharp statement. It's you. I chose Penelope Eckhart. I didn't choose a real daughter of the Duke. Your Highness, isn't that better for you now that his daughter is back? You won't be too involved even if you leave the mansion? As you said, the Duke won't turn you out right away. It's not goodbye yet. Before you get kicked out, come to the palace first, then isn't it over? Why do you make things so complicated? He looked at me, who was stunned, and muttered as if I couldn't understand him. I think we're pretty fond of each other. Am I mistaken? The fact that he knew about it made my heart flutter. He and I, we had feelings on each other, that real feeling that can never develop beyond that. This is why you and I can't be together. My heart sank slowly. I managed to squeeze out my voice. That fondness is not love. You're not a child, but I appreciate you, Princess, the Crown Prince answered rather nervously. That stupid emotional play is just an illusion that has a definite end. You know about that much. A real princess has appeared, but she is not worthy to be called ideal. Sounds like an excuse. Tell me the real reason, not that it would be more convincing for me that you would say no to me. No, at that moment the reasons for the refusal, which was difficult for even me to explain properly in words, became clear as bright day. I raised my head and looked Callisto in the eyes. I don't want to be with you without love, Your Highness. I don't want to choose you who don't love me, whom I don't love as well. Is that a reasonable reason now? At that moment, as I watched the red eyes shake slightly, I thought, this is how it should be. I moved silently, looking at his eyes as if they had lost their shine. I don't know when I'll be kicked out. I've always lived in uncertainty, Your Highness. Of course it's half decided that I'm going to be being kicked out now. Words worthy of sympathy flowed out in a desolate voice. It was in the middle of my confession to Callisto. Sadly, I didn't care about saying this. It wasn't even my situation. And it was a game story that was decided anyway. No matter what I do, I can't change it. Of all your suggestions, the premise that I will always be a lady is wrong. Your Highness, I'm comforting myself with the bitter certainty, and confided the secrets that I've been hiding. I want someone who will love me enough to get me out of this hell. I don't need man with moderate interests, who see me as a princess of the empire, but I need a man who will get me out of here. And I breathed heavily, and then breathed out like a sigh. I'm sure you're not that kind of person. Callisto's face, which I checked with glaring eyes, was lost. I'm not, he asked with a little commanding face. Yes, you're not. Once again I nodded slowly as I watched the red pupils shake faintly. Once again you will be the emperor. I managed to lean my head down, avoiding his gaze. There'll be more decent ladies if you look around. They have a proper understanding, and they are pleasant and reassuring to be with you. For example, a real lady of this house who came back, or someone else. While talking, I suddenly remembered the Crown Prince's route in the normal mode. After brutally killing the wicked woman who was harassing the heroine, he later held an engagement ceremony with her. And with the full support of the Duke of Eckhart, he defeat the unwarranted forces and rise to the throne, and then marry the heroine immediately after the ending. An illustration of the splendid marriage between the Crown Prince and the heroine, which was coming out of the epilogue, flashed through my mind. To be honest, Yvonne was very reluctant. But what's important is that the Crown Prince managed to survive the bloody battle with Yvonne on his back and grab the throne. In the illustration of the Crown Prince growing up and wearing a crown, He was smiling brightly as if he was perfectly satisfied. Well, that's what's important. It was not difficult to kill someone, but a new character's in my head, a handful of wobbly dungs. Maybe that would be more beneficial to you, Your Highness. A fairly sound voice leaked out what Callisto asked back. I muttered, staring at the small white flower that bloomed between the green grass under the table. It would be a better choice for you to marry the real princess, not me. Your mouth shut up. At that moment there was a chilling sound sharp enough to make the flesh sting. I raised with surprise my head, which was bowed down. The Crown Prince glared at me fiercely with his red eyes brightly glistening. How far are you going to insult me, Princess? Your Highness, now you're even a matchmaker, treating the Crown Prince as a stallion. Is my proposal seems funny to you? I couldn't figure out why he was suddenly angry. I panicked and replied barely while rolling my eyes. You know that's not what I meant. No, I don't know, the Crown Prince spat out before I could finish my words. Damn it, I don't know why you are doing this. He brushed his bangs roughly with one hand. Then you will send me to that bitch, and you will find another bastard and leave this house. What's with the sudden talk? Tell me, who's that bastard? I frowned at where our conversation is going. My escape is entirely up to me, you know. There's no one like that, and you know it's none of your business. I'm at my limit now. Penelope Eckhart, you'd better be careful what you say. A blue tendon stood on the back of his hand. Perhaps it really showed he was at his limit. I asked because I didn't understand. Why are you angry? So I look angry in your eyes now. The Crown Prince must have been unable to bear his anger, so he hit the table with his hands. Amazed by the loud noise, I shrugged my shoulders and I stared at him with dumb eyes. I don't understand. Why was he doing this to me while he didn't even love me? Your Highness needs another noblewoman who fits your interest without emotions, and I need someone who loves me. Is this hard to say? I returned what the Crown Prince had said. Callisto opened his eyes and called, not to know what to say. You, but that was it. He was so nice despite not saying a single word. A stifling silence fall in the glass greenhouse. For a short time we sit quietly without looking at each other. I suddenly felt deep fatigue and opened my mouth. Now don't come to me anymore, Your Highness. My lips moved without my knowledge. Callisto, who was clenching his fists tightly and keeping his temper, suddenly stared at me with his red eyes. Don't even give me your gifts. Pretend you don't know me from now on. Why? That's the way people are when they are not in a relationship. We're not like it, aren't we? Yes, I nodded my head and answered again. Your Highness and I have nothing to do with each other. We should keep going forward with our own separate paths. Haas! Callisto burst out laughing with the hysterical grin. He stretched out his fist, which he had held so tightly that there was a tendon, and swept down his face. The situation now seemed quite stuffy and complicated. The Crown Prince, who did so for a long time, lifted his hand from his face for a moment. He looked tired and asked, I need to make sure, Princess. Yes, go ahead. Just now have I been dumped? If you are unhappy, Your Highness may consider it as if you have dumped me. I replied neatly and dryly, as payback for the atrocities I committed in the maze garden the other day. It's really strange. I only answered the question, but he suddenly frowned at me. He once again sighed and opened his mouth. I believe that you had the same idea as I did. I thought you was looking at the same direction as me, walking the same path with the same mind. It feels so strange to hear you say that I hesitate to ask why. It's weird, so I just closed my mouth. Tap tap, like under emotional anxiety. The prince tapped the table again and again. I'm sure I predicted that you might refuse. You used to look at me like a rotten fish in front of me and spit out hateful words. There was a constant look of disgust at this man's choice of poor language, but I remained silent. For Callisto continued to speak his words with a dejected smile. But I never expected to be rejected like this, so I'm feeling really dirty. His words rattled my heart. I bit hard my lips. At that time the Crown Prince jumped out of his seat. The chair fell back at the rough gesture, but neither he nor I cared about it. I see your answer, Your Highness. See you at the coming-of-age ceremony. Without looking at me, he spat out like a shotgun. I answered hastily. You've already given me the gift, so you don't have to come that day. But even before I could finish speaking, Callisto turned away coldly, creating a wild wind, and he was walking fast towards the entrance of the greenhouse. Not long after, the roughly opened glass door closed with a roar. The glass greenhouse became silent in a moment. Well, I'm glad after he meets Yvonne and falls in love with her, I may not be able to speak the same words as before in front of Callisto. It was fortunate that I could speak before and not be miserable. I gratefully looked at the closed glass door and moved on to make a series of misfortunes. Callisto, who had just escaped through the glass door, suddenly looked down at something that struck him. What the fuck? Two guards lying on the floor carelessly, and a small body was squatting down and watching them carefully. Is she a maid? Before entering the greenhouse, those who had personally wanted to stop him with their fists were blocking his way even after they had collapsed. What a shameless fellow they were! He felt very uncomfortable. He kicked roughly with his shoe-padded feet, pushing away the arms of someone who was under his feet. Someone's moaning and sharp breaths were defined. Because those things had always been his daily routine, the road was cleared without anyone blocking his feet anymore. Only then did he move his steps. No, he was about to move it. Hey there! Suddenly the hem of his cape was pulled. He looked down slowly. He could see the pink top of head in front him. It was a maid. Oh, hello. Well, I'm Yvonne, who's been staying in this house, and I would like. You know, the guards are laying, so I was so surprised that I was looking at them. The maid uttered a series of useless words and made a mistake, but I didn't intend to make you uncomfortable and intentionally block your way. Get your hands off me! Callisto, who had been silent until then, suddenly opened his mouth. Yes, the maid lifted her head slightly. She looked puzzled, as if she didn't understand what he was saying. He felt something dirty which was stuck in the mud. Callisto clenched his teeth, holding back his anger. If you don't want to be hurt, get your hands off me. The maid blinked blankly, as if she didn't understand what he was saying. The Crown Prince took out his sword right away. As always, he recited with low voice, knives pressed under the woman's neck. Did your ears get clogged? Don't you know it's a summary execution if you touch the imperial body without permission? I didn't know it. I'm so sorry. A sharp blade pressed under her neck. A tingling pain began to make the maid tremble like a tiny tree. He really didn't want to hear the woman cry. When he was a child, he dreamed of someone who would hold on to him and feel free with. He wanted to kill this woman right away, but he managed to control his anger just behind. It was because of the woman in the greenhouse. She hated blood, and hated cruelty. Even if he only showed her beautiful and pretty things she liked, she would never associate herself with him again if he used your sword in anywhere. Callisto took a deep breath and put the sword back into its sheath. You have to select your people carefully. Duke, you haven't educated your employees well. And still with her head bowed down before him, he strode past the shivering pink hair as if it's not worth dealing with. The Crown Prince disappeared with a red cape, and it wasn't long before Yvonne raised her head. Her face, all wet with tears, was so pitiful and beautiful. However, the blue eyes that looked at the side where the Crown Prince disappeared were not at all so. Her hand, hidden behind her back, trembled with one shard piece held tight. I didn't get up until it was time for the Crown Prince to return to the Imperial Palace completely. It was around the time I left the greenhouse I found two guards lying passed out on the floor in front of the door, and a small figure next to them. He really knocked them out when the dismay because of the Crown Prince's action past discomfort soon came. It was because of the pink hair. She raised her head and looked at me. Her crying eyes were burning red, as if she was crying out of pity because of one of the guards. Even her crying face was pretty. For a moment I looked at her with a frown on my face, and was about to walk past her. Wait, Princess! Yvonne jumped up and blocked my path. When my path was blocked, an unintentionally crooked voice came out. What is it? Hello, Princess. That is, I was taking a walk when I saw these guards passed out, and I was trying to call someone, and I was worried that the princess might be going around alone. Exactly like the settings in the game. Yvonne looked very innocent and kind. After telling me why she was hanging around, she tilted her head down when there was no answer back. I'm sorry, but I'm never like that. With her shivering shoulders, she was like a fawn without a family in front of a big fierce wildcat. I suddenly got a headache. I didn't do anything, but I already felt like I was the only villain in the world. Yeah, it would be just great if Derek or Reynolds showed up right now. For my safety, I have to get out of this place quickly. I hurriedly opened my mouth. No need to worry about it. They'll wake up on their own. I think you're here to see the greenhouse. Please continue. The moment I was about to pass by, leaving behind a wobbly Yvonne. A bloody smell hit through my nose. I stopped walking further, and I turned my head towards Yvonne. A couple of bloodstains were clearly marked on the collar of her white dress. As I looked up, I noticed a slight cut through her soft pink hair. Are you hurt? I asked with my eyes wide open. Oh, well, that's... Yvonne stepped back from me, shoving her neck in one hand. It's no big deal. Come here, let me see. I went as far as approaching her and forcing her hand off her neck. Yvonne breathed, and when I lifted her cumbersome pink hair, I checked the wound with serious eyes. Fortunately the wound was shallow, it was only a slight scratch compared to when I was cut. But I wasn't at all relieved by the man who did this. Crazy bastard, she's the Duke's real daughter. Without thinking twice I felt that the Crown Prince was the culprit. I frowned at his arrogance, and stared at the wound on Yvonne's neck. Not that I was worried about her. I'm just worried about how the Duke and his 2 sons will react when they find out. I'm sure he didn't do this in easy mode. It meant nothing to think about that now. It was all messed up because of Isekai, and I didn't think it would make any difference if I blamed the fucking game. You could get an infection, so you'd better go ahead and treat it. I opened my mouth, swallowing a sigh. It was already done by the Crown Prince, no less. There was nothing I could do. I can't be here with an injured Yvonne and be blamed for this. Go to the butler and asked him to call a doctor, then have a good day. I gently let go of Yvonne and turned my back again. Wait, princess, but before I could take a single step my skirt was caught as I inadvertently turned her head. Yvonne bit her lips and asked carefully, he's from the royal family, right? The blonde with red eyes, His Majesty the Crown Prince. You and him, are you close with him? After giving her a gentle answer my face froze from the question that followed. There were sharp words at the tip of my tongue in response to why she would ask such a thing. However, I struggled not to and spit out, how dare you speak of a friendship with the little son of the Empire where it is concerned only one person? Sorry. Yvonne's head was bent down again, but she didn't stop asking questions. Well, by the way, if someone asks why I'm hurt, it's better to say it was just scratch something, right? Her watery blue eyes wobbled weakly as they looked at me. I couldn't stand it, and twisted my face. Why are you asking me that? Do whatever you want. If you want to make things bigger, tell the truth, and if you want to move on quietly, then keep quiet. At the end of my remark I snapped her hand off the hem of the skirt. I'm sorry. Her helpless muttering seemed really pitiful. But I watched her with rigid eyes, to be exact, her one arm that's been hiding behind her since earlier. I just returned to the mansion, leaving Yvonne behind. When I arrived at the main hall to go towards my room, there was a commotion. Luxurious boxes with shiny jewels, dresses, and other luxuries piled up all over the place. It was a huge number, with the interior full of the Duke's mansion, which was a couple times larger than the mansions of most aristocrats. The busy servants greeted me with a bewildered look. As I kept walking with a frown on my face, the butler, who was in the middle of it leading them, recognized me. Oh, my lady, have they already decided to treat her as a lady? I laughed sarcastically. Yes. The butler looked perplexed at me, looking upset. There was only one reason why I felt so dirty. Don't worry about this. I've kept Yvonne in line. I don't intend to make this public until I'm sure. It was yesterday morning that the Duke told me that. But when I saw him buying and transporting all kinds of luxury goods in less than a day, I felt like my quiet spirit was twisting. If you're going to do this, why don't you just take her and dress up her from head to toe? The real lady is back, and you're advertising it. I was nervous about kicking one of the golden boxes at my feet. I also felt that I was a very mean villain, but it was hard for me to suppress my irritation. It's not like that, my lady, that's not it. The butler hastily denied my words. These are all birthday gifts for the young lady. They were brought by the Crown Prince. What I hesitated, dozens of things that at a glance did not seem to be ordinary accessories were on the floor. A vast number of dresses, shoes, gloves, hats, and a crossbow placed on top of the boxes. Looking around the chaotic main hall once again, I asked dejectedly, these are all mine? Yes, he told you not to feel pressured. I was dumbfounded and touched my forehead with an empty laugh. I told him not to give me a gift, and instead he sent a huge number of gifts, as if he had robbed a whole country. He sent different types of crossbows. How should I arrange it, my lady? The butler asked, looking at me with a confused look on my face. There are some that are simply used for decoration, and there are ones with magic, and some that seem to be used in war for killing. Where he pointed there really were dozens of crossbow boxes. The servants, who had opened some of the boxes, looked back at me with troubled faces. Do you think what I've been eating and doing nothing but shooting a crossbow? I thought I should just send them all back, but then he may come back to the duchy. I felt a sudden surge of fatigue. I turned around and beckoned the butler. Keep it organized. Butler, I'm tired, so I'll go up first. Yes, my lady, then I'll personally take care of it. Please rest. The butler bowed his head to see me off. Now, first of all, we should classify accessories by category. With a clap of applause, the butler's voice echoed behind my back as they began to clean up. Somehow he looked a little excited. Someone was anxiously waiting for me when I came back to my room. My lady. Emily. I slowly walked up to Emily, who looked delighted. Have you been well? Yes. She nodded with a rough breath. I took off my shawl and handed it to her, and as I went to the front of the desk, I asked calmly, as if nothing had happened, "What did he say?" At first he checked several times to see if you had really sent me. When I answered many times, the guild master refused to accept such a request. "Emily, just get to the point," I cut off the emphatic maid. "So he can't do it." "I said what you told me to, and he said he would prepare and send it soon," she answered timidly with her head down. The secret instructions I ordered seemed to be quite a burden. "Very good." A brief response with praise. I took out the book I had read a while ago. "But that's not the end," Emily added carefully. "The master asked me to deliver a message to you." "What is it?" "With this he have cleared up all his debts he owe you. So he won't be asked again." My hand, which was turning over the cover of the book, froze in the air. "Okay," I muttered after a while. "I'll never see him again." That night a rabbit appeared in my room with a rough gust of wind. Not the baby rabbit I saw the other day, but an adult rabbit. The rabbit looked at me silently for a while without making any noise. Am I mistaken? In a hazy gaze I could see a dark blue color. Soon after, the rabbit opened its mouth wide and vomited something. It was a grotesque scene, like a terrible nightmare. The rabbit who had just vomited something disappeared with the gust of the wind again. It felt like a dream, but it wasn't. The rabbit's vomit was in front of my eyes. I grasped it, and woke up. At that night time flew by like an arrow with no chance to catch it, and finally the coming-of-age day had arrived. Like every time I attended a banquet, I was forced to wake up at dawn by the maids. I hardly slept anyway, so it wasn't as annoying as other times. However, after they repeatedly rubbed something on my face and body and washed it in water with perfumed oil, I became a kimchi by the time I left the bathroom. "Everyone knows what day it is today, right, my lady? You must shine more than ever." "Yes, leave it to us, my lady. We'll pour our soul into making your beauty stand out even more." The maids, who normally couldn't even raise their heads properly in front of me, clenched their fists and joined forces. "Today, just do it, please." Of course, my powerless pleas was ignored. The maids put in more effort, more than usual, with my makeup and hair. Only when the maids let me go after quite a long time I was finally able to see my reflection in the mirror. As I slowly opened my eyes, someone gave a sigh of exclamation. Unlike other times, most of the maids were quiet. I soon found out why. My reflection in the mirror was really beautiful enough to give them exclamations. The eyes were raised to the point where the expressionless face looked rather bright, and the makeup made them look pretty and colorful. My dainty nose, reddish cheeks and lips, and dark pink hair, which was finely braided, looked quite lovely. I slowly raised my hand and touched my cheek. Pretty Penelope, who I saw in an illustration of the coming-of-age ceremony scene in easy mode, was so breathtakingly pretty. "You're so pretty. It's so unfortunate that I didn't recognize her at that time." Looking into the mirror, I felt a little sad. I feel sorry for the loss of this body's owner, who would soon be helpless against what I was going to do. "You can't touch your face. Don't touch your face today." However, my moment of pity was lost when the maids pulled me back to reality. "Okay." I lowered my hand gently with a disapproving look. "I thought it would be better for me to say nothing today." "It'll be the first and last time." Then another maid said, "My lady, and the dress?" I tried to instruct them to bring the same as usual. By usual I meant something subtle that covered my neck. However, the moment I was about to open my mouth, the maids slowly walked closer, holding a dress on a hanger. "Please wear this dress today, my lady," Emily said while looking at me. "This. Nothing looks better on you today than this dress." I hesitated when I saw the dress they had brought me, the dark blue gown spread out to the floor. There was a silver powder that glistened over it. The color that spread out gradually met with the finely embroidered gold thread at the bottom. A dress that resembles the calm moonlit sea at night. It was a gift from the Crown Prince. I grimaced a bit when I saw it. Emily nervously begged at my expression. "It's the one and only ceremony where you should shine more than anyone else, my lady. Commoners also wear expensive clothes even if they have to be in debt. Just this once, please do as we say today." "Yes, my lady. That's right, my lady. The things you've often worn in the past are a little dark and simple. But of course my lady is beautiful in all types of clothes." The maids were waiting once each of Emily's words poured out. It seems they didn't like my modest look that I wore every time I went out. "What is this?" The maids, trying to persuade me with all their might, looked a little sad. "Okay, I put it on just this once." Eventually I nodded lightly. "Really, are you serious, my lady? Well then, you're going to wear accessories as a dress and a set too, right? Don't ask such an obvious thing." The maids were happy I was sorry for the Crown Prince's gift, but this was going to be all a memory. Maybe he wouldn't come today. Suddenly I remembered the prince's back as he left the greenhouse in anger. Maybe I would also be angry if someone refused to accept my offer. Not only once but several times. I swallowed a bitter laugh. All the dresses and accessories were ready and the maids were filled with praise and admiration again. Maybe it was because I didn't sleep properly for a few days that I was too exhausted to check the mirror again. After they were finished, I asked Emily for refreshments to take a quick rest. After a while, Emily brought me a sofa so that I could rest without ruining my dress. I asked Emily with a low voice, leaning close to her face. Do we still have a long time to wait? When does it start? We're going to receive guests starting at noon. The ceremony is at 2 o'clock, my lady. What is she doing? I asked briefly, moistening my throat with the cold tea Emily had brought me. The refreshments were just an excuse. Emily answered my question hesitatingly. She's in the young duke's office. They're having tea at this hour, I asked back with a startled voice. It was still early in the morning, before lunch, perhaps because they got ready early in the morning. To have tea time, either the day or the time was right. Nothing much happened. Anxiety lurked in my stomach, however I had to endure it even if something happened besides. Whether Derek would be brainwashed or not, anyway, that was it. At that time a cautious voice startled me, who was lost in thought. My lady, the request for the master of the guild. Quiet, watch your mouth. I clicked my tongue and warned her right away. And I check around with a frown. Emily, are you sure you acted in secret without anyone knowing as I told you to do? Yes, my lady. Emily nodded wildly. By the way, my lady, she suddenly whispered, her brown eyes gently looking around, there was something suspicious last night. What was it? I was going back to my room to wash up and I met Becky in front of the building. She asking me the way to the office's street? What? Becky was Yvonne's temporary maid. I jumped back and shouted while leaning toward. Why are you telling me that now? It was too late, so I couldn't wake you up, my lady. Emily quickly excused herself with an embarrassed face. But don't worry, my lady. Of course, I said. I didn't know. She said okay, and I just went back to my room. That's good. I leaned over the plump cushion, replying rather insincerely. Tap, tap. I tapped on the armrest of the sofa while I was lost deep in thought. Why would she want to find the office's street? To meet Vinter? There was a good possibility that was it. Even in normal mode, Yvonne looked for Vinter, who helped her return to the dukedom, but now, unlike the original story in the game, it was Eclise who brought her first. It was my best guess and assumption that Vinter and her had already run into each other. After all, he didn't bring her, so it was unclear what had happened between the two. I jumped out of my seat and walked to the desk. Emily, go out for a moment. What? Oh yes. When Emily left, the room was enveloped in silence. I said I trusted her, but there was no one here I trusted. Standing in front of the desk, I took out my keys and opened the last locked drawer. There was a piece of paper inside in which I wrote down capture targets information when I first came here and arranged their favorability in spare time. And there were different items from the quest, items from Vinter, and transactions with him last night. I fumbled for the bottle of purple liquid that the rabbit spat out yesterday. It was then suddenly red and silver light poured out of the drawer. I was a little surprised and hesitated, and soon took out the source of the light. It was an ancient magic necklace that Vinter put on me during the Traiton's volunteer work. A large bead embedded in the middle of a star-shaped ornament sewn in dark red and vibrated shallowly. I followed the direction of the bead's light in a daze. Ironically, it was Eclise who came to my mind the moment I saw the bottle of purple liquid illuminated by dark red light. The color of the favorability's gauge bar that I didn't care much about. It was death. At that moment my heart sank. I didn't know that my plan was on the path of complete disaster. No, maybe I've been trying to deny it because I've been blinded by favorability. It was a love like death. He would even kill me to have me. It was terrifying love. The unexpected realization made me dizzy. As soon as I felt the hand holding the necklace was shaking, it was that. Knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. I raised my head suddenly in fright to hide the light of the necklace. I shut the drawer of the desk roughly, and hurriedly raised my bent body and immediately identified the visitor. Who is it? Your father? My mind went blank for a moment. Why does the Duke come to me at this hour? As soon as the thought came to my mind. Knock, knock. He knocked one more time. Penelope, may I come in? Yes, come on in. I couldn't keep the Duke outside forever, so I hurried. Click. The door opened right away. As he entered the room, he suddenly stopped walking when he saw me. The Duke's eyes shook slightly. Father, when I called out to the frozen Duke, He soon closed the door and entered completely. The Duke went to the table in front of the window and sat down, exactly like when he came to talk about the transfer of the mine the other day. Standing in front of the desk, I followed him and sat on the opposite side. When I tried to deal with the Duke in an unknown situation, I felt like I was in a quandary and hopeless. I took several deep breaths to calm my trembling heart. And when my breathing became a little calmer, I opened my mouth. "Shall I ask for some refreshments?" "It's fine," the Duke dismissed me briefly. An awkward feeling settled in the room. When he showed no sign of speaking first, I reluctantly spoke again. "What brings you here?" At my words, the Duke made a rare embarrassed face. "Didn't you ask me to come and greet you on the morning of your coming-of-age ceremony?" I did ask him to do that, yeah. That's what I said before the heroine appeared. I had forgotten it didn't actually mean it that much. At that time I was a little sad for the Duke, who was about to lose his foster daughter, who pretended to be mature for a while, and I was still hopeful that I would be able to escape today. I don't know what's going to happen now. Of course, now that I think about it, it's all bullshit. I answered casually, trying not to show my prickly feelings. "Thank you for listening today." The Duke hesitated a little. "You are very beautiful today, Penelope." The Duke wasn't originally able to express the feelings of praise. So I was a little surprised by his praise, which he had unexpectedly said, but soon I became a little wretched. "Thank you, Father." The appearance of a grown Duke was indeed overflowing with grand aristocratic dignity. Looking at the black jacket with the Eckhart silver pattern clearly engraved, I answered in a dull, dry manner. "Father looks handsome today, too. I've never seen this dress and accessories before. You said you didn't want to get it through the Empress tailor. Did you buy it separately?" "Yes, it looks good on you, it's pretty." The Duke repeated the same words twice, but I just accepted his words because I couldn't tell him it was a gift from the Crown Prince. I felt more and more strange. My stomach was about to feel nauseous again, so I tightened the grip on my fist. "By the way, what's in your hand?" Suddenly the Duke glanced at one of my hands. I lowered my gaze along with his, and saw a long string of silver sticking out between my clenched fists. I let out a disconcerted sound. I was so nervous that I barely remembered that I still held the necklace tightly in my hand. The end of the star ornament was sticking out between my fingers. "Is it a necklace?" The Duke's eyes were filled with interest because of its unusual appearance at a glance. I hurriedly loosened my hand and hung it around my neck. "Yes, I got it as a gift." "From whom?" "The owner of the weapons shop that I went to sent me a magic necklace to celebrate my coming of age. It's the place where I bought Father's amulet." "Oh, that's a pretty good service. I'll have to buy my arrows there next time." Fortunately, the Duke readily accepted my response. "But I don't think it fits the dress you're wearing today. But I'm going to wear it because of the sincerity behind the gift." Of course, I didn't mean to. I was going to take it off as soon as the Duke left. "You have a good heart," but his reaction was strange. "What's wrong with him today?" I looked up at him with strange eyes and asked him carefully. "Do you have anything to say to me?" "No, not really. I just wanted to do what you asked me to do." "I see. It's nice to see you before the meal, Father. I'm afraid I'm taking away too much of your time since you're busy greeting the guests." I was subtly telling him to leave now, that it was enough. The Duke, however, hesitated, as if he had something else to say. After a long time he soon spit out something with a deep breath. "I'm sorry, it was an unexpected apology." I asked back with a puzzled look, "What is it? Didn't you feel frustrated because of the guards I had arranged to you? After the coming-of-age ceremony I'll replace all of them." "Oh, that the time when I was about to go crazy because I was frustrated was already past." "I understand, Father, I would do the same." A cliché voice flowed out. After the conversation with me, he seemed to have a guilty conscience. The Duke was often like that. If he thought it was a little too much, he'd give me materialistic compensation. That was his way of apologizing. He came to apologize in person. I didn't know he would say it in the end. I uttered words that would relieve the Duke of his remorse, as he always wanted. "It'll be the last time anyway, so I won't be able to do it later. You had no choice but to keep an eye on me if you wanted to stop me from harming Yvonne. I didn't have to go out anyway, and I was fine." What? The Duke paused and looked back at me with a surprised look. What are you talking about, Penelope, my dear? It's not like that. Then I did it for you because I was worried about you. Yes, you brought that guy here with you. You looked at me with that look on your face. What I felt a sense of incompatibility in the Duke's dark blue eyes. The answer was subtly changed from when we talked about the same topic a few days ago. Previously he didn't confirm it, but he didn't deny my words that I might have been escorted not to harm Yvonne. But that, what do you mean, father? I asked back with a confused face. After a long silence the Duke opened his mouth heavily. It was right after the hunting competition. Reynolds came to see me. He said he had something to confess. What is it? Do you remember what happened not long after you came with me to dukedom? The reason why we closed the third floor. Yes, of course, the real Penelope could never forget, not even myself. The injustice she felt at that time, the misery, she had no choice but to call him Duke, and not father. Reynolds told me about what happened then. In fact, he said that you didn't steal Yvonne's necklace. I opened my eyes wide. I never imagined it would happen. Do you know everything? Even though I didn't personally experience it, a seething anger soared up my throat in that moment. In the game, Penelope was to blame until she was died. Otherwise she could not go through the routes and throw herself out of the quest, turning in terrible corpse. That I didn't do it, but Reynolds who did it all? My trembling voice asked. The Duke nodded with a dark face. I want to punish him right away. What's more, I couldn't stand it any longer, so I shook my head. The Duke spoke slowly. I couldn't punish him properly. All I could do was make him train intensely. I wanted to beat him with all my might, but I suddenly wondered if I was the one who deserved it. Penelope, the Duke stared at me with reddened eyes full of remorse and regret. When I first saw you, you were so small and skinny. You came to me with barren eyes to beg for something to eat. Those were not a child's eyes. Somewhere I kept getting caught myself for fear that Yvonne had to go through the same as you did. Sometimes whenever you came to beg, I tried to get you to eat something, but one day you got a gold coin and you smiled for the first time. It was so pretty I couldn't leave you, who was starving to death beside your dead mother. So I decided I'd take you away so you wouldn't starve. It was the first meeting between Penelope and the Duke I heard for the first time. It didn't even appear in the game. But I was stupid and impulsively brought you here when I didn't even know how to take care of you. Not only you but Derek and Reynolds. So at that time I just thought you wanted accessories too. As a father I thought I should cover up for your faults. If I had known you'd call me the Duke for 6 years after that, I wouldn't have done that. The Duke muttered in a lonely face as if recalling that day. Why now? I bit my lips hard. It's already too late. That's when the first meeting with Sons of the Duke went wrong, and Penelope was abused, and she got out of control and ended up with the worst ending. When I looked at him vacantly without saying anything, he managed to open his mouth again. I've forgotten about it for a long time. But the look you were looking at me that day is still clear. And a few days ago, when you saw the guy who brought Yvonne, you had the same look on your face. At that moment all I could think about was getting him far away from you. What kind of facial expression did I make? That the Duke glanced at me and couldn't speak properly. You didn't make any expression. He hesitated and struggled to spit it out. Since you were a child you have often been angry, but when your anger reached its limits, you would rather shut up and erase your feelings. I was a little surprised because I was originally trying to kill my emotions. If I held my breath until I oppressed the things that pop out, and suffocate until I stopped choking, everything would disappear a little later and peace came. As if he was recalling that time, the Duke glanced at me and looked confused. But your eyes are like as if they are fading away, and they become strangely lifeless. That's when it feels like as if you became a dead person. The Duke frowned and couldn't finish speaking. At that moment a violent realization like lightning came to me. I could instinctively know. Penelope was already dead. To kill her feelings, she held her breath, held her feelings, and endured it, until she finally died from it. In the game where the villainess lost her life, I came to possess her body. I was so used to this family that I didn't even think about it. Then what about Penelope if I escape? No matter how magical the game is, the dead never lived. It's only a family affair, but I found it hard to shake off the creeps that ran down the back of my neck. What's the game story? Can the FL target ML without Penelope? My brain didn't work well. The most important thing here was my escape. What about me? Can I really get out of this game? I felt like I was in a labyrinth without an exit. My breath became heavy. The Duke looked surprised at me, panting shallowly. It's a slip of the tongue, forget it. However, the heart that raged wildly did not calm down. Looking at me getting pale, the Duke asked urgently, Penelope, are you sick? Should I call a doctor? No, father, I shook my head with difficulty. And she opened her mouth, trying to hold her breath and force her heart to calm down as usual. I'm a little surprised that my father knew. The Duke accepted my excuse with a firm countenance. He squirted his lips with difficulty. Penelope, I'm such an immature and ugly father that I still don't know how to treat with you. I looked at him in silence for the first time, holding my breath. I thought it would be all right if I gave all the things you asked for, and let your anger out every time you didn't care about me the way you used to be. I thought that would work. That's not it. Now he knew it. Now it was a sad realization. Finally he stared at me without an answer, and he opened his mouth. Eclise, is he that good? I caught my eyes at the sudden noise. What are you? You're the child who had an open mind. But he brought Yvonne. I was afraid you'd get hurt. That's why I didn't let you meet him. But if you really want it, I'll bring him back to your escort when the ceremony is over. So eat your food in time. I looked at the Duke with gloomy eyes. The word should have been said 3 days ago. No, in fact, if I had been allowed to meet Eclise then, nothing would have changed. Since the color of the gauge bar was dark red, I've already failed to Eclise's route. It's not like that, father. I shook my head slowly. I was so surprised that day. He's just a benefactor who helped in an emergency, and he's not a more meaningful person. I know you don't mean it. I was sincere now, but I wonder if it was because I really wanted Eclise. The Duke did not readily believe it. Then Yvonne, I asked back in a dreary voice. She said she wanted Eclise. The Duke looked embarrassed at my words, and soon answered calmly. She have to live in the same house for the time being, and as you say, you have to keep the good between sisters. I didn't know the fact that I and she are sisters had already been decided. Penelope, he called me nicely. If you look at it, Yvonne was the older sister. By the time she returned to the Duke, it occurred to her, as if she had seen the epiphany of a brief coming-of-age ceremony for her birthday. You've changed your words again. At the same time I noticed the subtly changed attitude of the Duke from 3 days ago. At the time I think he was in halfway of attaching Eclise to Yvonne. I was trying to understand which side the Duke really was. Suddenly everything became meaningless. What was the use of getting it now? With so many opportunities missed, I was now nearing the end of the hard mode. Duke, I put in a title that I hadn't called for a long time. The Duke's blue pupils dilated greatly at a strange call after a long time. I talked to him calmly. Don't bother about me that much anymore. Penelope, I was greatly indebted to you for staying at the dukedom as a lady instead of Yvonne for 6 years. I've seen and learned, so I know that knowing when to leave is a virtue of noble. What are you talking about? What do you mean instead? I don't want the whole dukedom to be subject of the joke because of me. I want to leave quietly. Leave it. The Duke, who was stammering in embarrassment, let out a roar at the moment. Why do you keep making such noises from the past? Where on earth are you going while being an unmarried woman without a home? Your daughter is back. The Duke took a deep sigh and touched his forehead. He said with a vague eye that even I would notice. What are you talking about, Penelope? You are also my daughter. It's not too late now, Duke. Please cancel the coming-of-age ceremony. Penelope Eckhart, he shouted again. This wasn't just a stand to avoid the coming-of-age ceremony. It is already too late to do so. It was a piece of advice for the Duke, who called all the nobles of the empire and even the people of other countries. If you're worried about losing face to others, you can postpone it for a while and hold Yvonne's coming-of-age ceremony in a big way. I'm not pushing the coming-of-age ceremony so far just for my appearances. Also, the Duke, who raged, shut up. He who stared at me fiercely soon relaxed his eyes and avoided my gaze. Within seconds of the voice, he looked as if he had aged 10 years. I wanted to make your one-time coming-of-age ceremony the best. Soon after, he told why he couldn't cancel it. For your happiness, I want you to ask for forgiveness, though it's late. I couldn't stop my face from distorting again. Yvonne, yes. I was delighted that the girl who I thought was dead came back. I feel guilty for all the trouble you've suffered, and I'm sorry to even hold your big coming-of-age ceremony banquet without your approval. But you're also my daughter Penelope. Ever since I brought you here to the dukedom, I never thought you wasn't my daughter. My vision was blurred. I had a hard time throwing up a piece of injustice that I had never said about before here. But why don't you do me a favor once? Am I doing something wrong again? The Duke asked back with a weary voice. Is it something you want to hide, Yvonne, and make your coming-of-age ceremony more spectacular than anyone else? I'm sorry I didn't hear you ask me to cancel the adult ceremony. But there are some guests who have already arrived, so how can I cancel it? The Duke was gentle but firmly refused my request. I will announce about Yvonne after your coming-of-age ceremony is over and after a long time has passed. So you're just thinking about it as a good day ceremony. The Duke, who was rambling, stopped talking. Penelope, the blue eyes grew gradually. The Duke dragged his chair and got up rough from his seat. Hey, what's wrong with you? The restless man reached out to me. Hot warmth touched under my eyes. Only then did I realize that my eyes were wet. On a happy day just once in your life, why are you crying? Baby, it's all your father's fault. Don't cry, okay? The Duke, unable to figure out what to do with a stream of tears, finally embraced me and comforted me. It's not that sad, but I couldn't tell why my tears were flowing. He's just a character in the game. But nevertheless, despite neglecting Penelope and making me countless miserable right after the possession, at that moment he really felt like a father. Father, yes, tell me everything. Goodbye, I finally muttered a greeting to the Duke that I couldn't say. Early in the morning, could you come and say hello greeting? Yeah, a little farewell to your immature little daughter. My lady, it's time to go. Emily picked me up shortly after the Duke left. Yes, I nodded and raised my body. I followed Emily down, and it was calmer than I thought. The venue for the coming-of-age ceremony was decorated with a banquet hall inside the mansion, not in the front garden but in the back garden. It was the will of the Duke. It was a place that I spend a lot of time, and it was really meaningless. After pressing down on the aching stomach again, I strode past the wide-open back door. The bright sunlight shone outside. The place, which had been off-limits for 2 days due to preparations for the ceremony, was turned into a starland. New white drapes, tents, flowers, crystals, and various jewels with lavishly decorated podiums, and numerous tables embroidered with colorful gold coins. Apparently a huge fountain, which had not been there until a few days ago, was pouring with water in the middle. As if to adorn all of it, a rare flamboyant, colorful flower rain fell from the sky. It's not a fantasy, it's a real-life magic, my lady. Emily whispered gladly, for today, the Duke hired a large number of wizards. When I heard that, I could see a little bit why the Duke insisted so strongly that he couldn't cancel it. The ceremony was simply the height of luxury that seemed to have been poured out of money. It's so beautiful, my lady, Emily muttered while looking up at the sky with her dreamy eyes. I extended my hand just in time. A falling petal settled down on my palm. At that moment I couldn't stop my view from blurring. The coveted flesh-colored petals were the Ellenwick rose. To avoid the quarrel with Reynold, who said it was meaningless and pretty in front of the Duke. When I was staring down at it, suddenly, someone snatched my hand towards the air. What are you doing standing here stupidly? When I looked up, I saw his light pink hair. I asked, frowning, what? There's no one knight saying he'll escort you to the ceremony, right? You could have been a fool without me. I don't need you, I can go alone. And I told you not to talk to me for a while. I said it sharply and then snapped and plucked my hand. Hey, Reynold took my hand back in a hurry. Let it go, don't you hear me? What will happen to Eckhart if you go alone? You have 2 brothers, and they'll point at us if we don't escort you. What do you know? When I twisted my arm without care, Reynold exclaimed hurriedly. Father, he told me to take care of you so you wouldn't get into trouble. Hey, you tell her. Dad made me do it, didn't he? He fiercely glared at Emily, frightened. Emily nodded wildly. Yes, my lady, I've heard it too. The young master will escort you to the ceremony. You see, she heard him. It was an obvious lie to anyone. I sighed indistinctly and relaxed my arm. I didn't want to be in touch with Reynold, but if I continued to fight like this, everyone's attention would be drawn. He quickly followed me when I moved without a word, assuming that I had no escort. I didn't want to see his smile, so I fixed my eyes only on the front. There was quite a distance to the podium beyond the fountain in the middle. I stepped on the red carpet holding Reynolds' hand, who was like gentleman, and I heard a familiar whisper. It must be true, well, I mean, even though she has been such a scoundrel all this time. What's this decoration for her? Oh, my God, it looks too expensive. It was the moment the light flashed before my eyes. System U has a reputation of plus 100 for your improved relationships with people around you. Total, 460. I watched the news of my reputation increase on the last day of hard mode with a cold eye. Reynold raised our hands higher to see if there were the extra people who doubted in our good relationship. After making many twists and turns, I finally reached my place for today. Even though he completed his mission, he didn't leave my side. I was the only one who worried about it, so I watched the fountain that poured water freely. But the dreaded fear of terror wouldn't let me stay still. Are you still upset about that? No, I immediately answered before this guy's words were finished. Said Reynold, who burst out laughing, thunderstruck as if he were dumbfounded. Just pretend you're listening and answer. I'm listening. You're definitely upset. I tried to ignore it, but the hateful words and deeds kept coming under my eyes. Why do you think I'm upset? I don't care at all. The way you talk is just like it before you start screaming. I'm sorry I couldn't meet to your expectations, but I don't want to waste the time putting that kind of emotion into you. Oh, my baby, she's pouting. He pinched my cheek and chatted. I hit that hand and I screamed in astonishment. Are you crazy, oh my? Now you're just hooked. I sighed deeply and fixed my gaze again at the fountain. Even though the ceremony didn't start, but it felt like the day had already ended. It was the moment I was determined to ignore him thoroughly from now on, for the sake of my mental health. I'm sorry I misunderstood you. A small apology has been heard. I looked back at him as if I had heard something unfamiliar. But this time Reynold didn't face me. I didn't do it on purpose, you know that. That I sometimes talk like a prick. It was really surprising that he knew it. You must be anxious to pick a fight with me all the time. This, looking at the sister drowning in the water. He was literally tormenting me in a fit of rage, and soon frowned and muttered. Actually, I don't know why I did it. When I think about that time, maybe it was because I had a dream before that. Dream? What kind of dream? I had the same dream the night before. So I thought you were really beating her. You know, déjà vu phenomenon. Reynold tilted his head and soon returned to original topic. So be yourself as usually. Would you even dream of playing at some king of game? My hair suddenly stood on end. I had a vague idea of how it happened then. It was clear that Yvonne tried to brainwash not only the Duke but also Reynold. I held back my trembling hands and opened my mouth. You don't feel sorry for her? What, she's supposed to keep being hidden because of my coming-of-age ceremony? Reynold answered me with a shrug. What do you say? It's not even clear yet. If our father can't tell whether she is real or not, then you don't need to be sad. The appearance of my brother Reynold, who was lifted from the influence of brainwashing, seemed didn't care much about her. I was a little dazed. I was the only one who appeared and stood on all the alert and nerves. So far the Duke's family had dealt with numerous fraudsters who had been looking for a reward. If this was reality, this episode was more natural. The idea of a tale-to-door affair ended with a bizarre act by Reynold. Suddenly he bent down and pulled something out of the cloth that was stretched down the podium. Here, take it. What he gave me was a pretty big wooden box. What is it? I didn't know what it was, so I just had to stare at it. Then he threw the box helplessly. And I opened the lid without a moment's hesitation. When I looked inside the box, I slowly opened my eyes wide. On top of a pile of straw lay the mass of 4 furry balls huddled together, and someone was snoring in his sleep. They were baby rabbits. White, gray, black, and the last one, uniquely has a green dot on a sky blue fur. Is it a bunny? The rabbits you told me to let go of have their babies crammed near the curb. These are already 3 years old. I completely forgot hunting competition. After I was done, he asked the persistent question, is there any kind of prey from hunting you want? I answered rabbit. When I made a stupid noise, Reynolds frowned violently. You didn't even look at them, did you? Not only did I look into it, I didn't even know that he had taken care of the rabbit. Frustrated, Reynolds pointed to one of the cubs, who was inside the box. This is my gift. It was a unique rabbit with a green dot on its sky blue fur. As I stared blankly at it, Reynolds silently moved. I bought a green rabbit in the south for an expensive price, and I paired it with a sky blue one, but the little one with your eye-like color doesn't come out. Is it paint? If you mix it, the color will be darker? Hey, this is all I can say to you. Are you an idiot? I was dumbfounded and asked again, and Reynolds yelled in a fit of rage. However, his face turned red, as if he had been stabbed in the heart. And when I see it running, it's like a turquoise. Did I succeed? After a moment's stuttering, he shouted loudly. Then I looked inside the box in case the rabbits would wake up, and I carefully closed the lid. Take good care of them. Because you're their mom now. What about their mother? Where is it? They were either abandoned because they were weak, or their parents died. If I let them go, they would starve to death. I was a little solemn with that remark. I called Emily, who was standing by, and held out the box to her. Sadly, I couldn't keep Reynolds' words about taking the good care of them. But like a rare dark pink bird that Derek gave me as a gift, I couldn't refuse coldly. It was partly because they were newly born, and I could not ignore them because I felt that Reynolds had been put in agony. I whispered belatedly in a small voice, thanks for the gift, brother. At my words, Reynolds laughed brightly, revealing his relief. Happy birthday to you, Penelope. A light pink favorabilities gauge bar glistened above his head. When I looked at it with strange look, one side of the hall became noisy. Reynolds, who turned his head and confirmed the cause, said with an impression, Hey, old man's here. I guess he's about to start nagging. He was a senior member of the Eckhart family who came to give a speech at the coming-of-age ceremony. It didn't appear in the game, but I knew it from the butler. I'm bringing my father, so stay alone for a while. As a member of the family, Reynolds was busy with this event. But where is he when I'm busy? What should I do, what he has to do? It was about time to turn away from him, ignoring his whining. Suddenly my cheeks were sore. Unconsciously I looked at someone face to face. As the seats were not fully occupied yet, the purple favorabilities gauge bar was blinking. It was Winter Verdandi. The coolness of his naked face, which I hadn't seen in a long time, turned to me. The guarded blue pupils made me return to the early days when I had infiltrated at his secret space. Well, is this good enough? I silently endured his cold gaze. It's a good piece of information, so he already would know. Yvonne came back to the dukedom and was somewhere in the mansion. Winter was originally a character who was so devoted to her that he brought Yvonne on the day of the coming-of-age ceremony. What was he thinking about when he saw me forcing him to make a request, even mentioning the mistakes he made to me at Trothan? It was then his cold gaze, which had been nailed to me, slid down. He stared at the dress, not my face. Oh, damn it. I, looking down as well, realized what he was looking at and gave myself a short recite of scolding. I forgot to take off my necklace because of the conversation with the Duke. It was a completely old-fashioned accessory that didn't look good on me. What should I do? You want me to take it off now? Of course nothing will happen. I left my bottle in my room. It was a moment when I looked down at the shiny white bead and I didn't know what to do. Suddenly one of my sides became dark, princess. I slowly raised my head to the familiar voice. The sun-haired blonde man stood coldly in front of me. Your Highness, I said him not to come, but I burst into laughter at the sight of the man who came at my coming-of-age ceremony. It seemed helpless for me to do anything about Callisto, who appeared confidently with a red cape. I greet the little son of the Empire. I bowed my head slightly. The crown prince, who didn't answer at my greeting, finally opened his mouth after a long time. Raise your head. At that remark I looked up and faced him. I told you not to pretend you know me, but you're pretending again. It's beautiful. His wrong answer was caused by my hasty attitude. I understood his words a little later. It was a dress that I wore thinking he wouldn't come, but I was embarrassed that the person who gave me the present appeared here. Even though I couldn't make eye contact with him and didn't know what to do, the Crown Prince uttered without hesitation. It's more than I imagined myself. It looked like that only to me, but looking around, it seems that all the guys were staring at you. He looked at me with an expressionless face and said bluntly. I was surprised to see the Crown Prince saying such things. I had never heard such a strange compliment, and once again I burst into laughter. I calmly decided to accept his gifts and praise. I don't know what to do with the hype. I'm not kidding, princess. He bent his head slightly toward me and whispered with low voice. I just barely endured on what I wanted to do because I want gouge all the eyes out of those bastards. I frowned upon the brutal joke. Keep holding it in until the end of the ceremony. Is that what the protagonist of today is going to say? Or take them to a place where I am not there? Only then Callisto loosened up his expression, which was fiercely rigid, and then he sighed and smiled. All right, because you hate cruelty. As he nodded his head, he asked suddenly, have you got my gift? Yes, there are so many presents that I don't know if I can use them all anyway, thank you, Your Highness. Don't feel too pressured because I picked them especially for you. When the butler delivered the message a few days ago, I thought it was just an exaggeration, but now he really said it himself. I was dumbfounded at his arrogant look and opened my mouth. Whenever you come to the duchy, do you come as it is a conquest war? What, is there somewhere you want to go? Just say it, I didn't know you were so belligerent. No, nothing. Callisto laughed short again at my answer. Then suddenly his gaze fell on the lower part of my chest. But wasn't that the one from Soleil last time? Yes. What? Following his gaze, I lowered my head and found an ancient magic necklace that I had just been worried about. It's weird. In other words, the Crown Prince commented that it didn't match to the dress. What is it you're so fond for? How dare you put me, the Crown Prince of the Empire, in such a humiliating situation? Shit, he added in an unpleasant voice. I fully understood his displeasure, and answered him gently. It's a gift from Vince. Vince, who is that? You know, the wizard from another country who helped me. Wearing a mask, oh, bare feet with the evil spirit. Whether he deliberately forgot, the Crown Prince exclaimed briefly. All he could remember was evil spirit and bare feet. I felt a little sorry for the evil spirit barefoot man behind me, so I just laughed awkwardly. What is it? Suddenly the Crown Prince asked, with his eyes slightly open. This necklace is supposed to protect the wearer's life. How? If there is a danger around, the color of the gem in the middle changes. I think it's like an amulet in that country. To be exact, it was to detect a change in nature caused by toxicity or magic, but I said roughly. You gave me a similar gift just like that. Only then the Crown Prince stopped inquiring persistently and sarcastically as if he wasn't convinced. I was curious about what similar gift it was, but I hurriedly took off my necklace rather than question it. Just wearing it. But the moment I had just caught the silver chain, Callisto stopped me. Why, on a day like this, all sorts of guys must have crawled in. How do you know what's going to happen? You said it's a gift like yours. But you can still trust its magic abilities. Callisto shrugged and answered cheerfully. I said so much, and I felt ashamed of my hurried attempt to take it off. The hand that held the silver chain was put down gently. And there was a short silence between us. Actually, I felt it from the beginning. Like me, he was trying as hard as he could not to argue today. It was amazing that we, who broke up 2 days ago as if we would never see each other again, were having such a casual conversation. That's enough, I thought so. I don't think I can leave anything behind. Your Highness, I glanced around, and I quietly opened my mouth. People are looking at us. For greeting the nobility who came to celebrate my coming-of-age ceremony, the time was quite late. There were already a lot of glances from this side a while ago. No more, that's weird. As soon as I was about to bring it up to finish the conversation, Callisto abruptly cut me off. Clearly, until yesterday, you were driving me crazy because you were mean and disgusting to me. So I kept thinking about whether or not to go this morning. To his shame, Callisto laughed at himself, as he had put himself in a funny position. But the moment I saw you today, the light brightened over your hair. I couldn't take my eyes off it. He paused. He muttered softly to himself, with his eyes down, without making eye contact with me. I thought it was obviously because of the sunlight. Still, even at the distance, princess. I'm blinded. He suddenly frowned and looked at me. And slowly reached out to me. The man's fingertips touched my head, caressing my hair, and touched the strands near my ears. Strange, did you put on some luminous magic? He tilted his head as if he really didn't know what was going on. I looked at him because it was him with his hand that stroked my head with his shaking eyes. The Crown Prince was giving out the same impression that I had always felt. Just as I felt about his golden hair, it wasn't much. The flowers on my head were a tiara or earrings I wear. There was enough light to reflect and to fit in his description like that. Nevertheless, as he said, I felt strange. My heart was pounding so hard. No, I couldn't stand but to tremble. System, would you like to check the favorability of Callisto? 4 million gold / fame 200. Because it's the last time. I choose 4 million gold with such rationalization and trembling hands. System, spent 4 million gold and checked the favorability of Callisto. The remaining funds 999,999,999 plus favorability 89%. Only then could I breathe out slowly. I looked up at the shiny figures, above the red favorabilities gauge bar. The emptiness and disappointment I felt last time seemed like illusion. The fact that he didn't yet fully admire me, I was truly relieved. It's no big deal, Your Highness. It's probably because of the diamonds. I managed to open my lips and laugh, desperately trying not to cry. I think the diamond you gave me is so valuable, Your Highness. Really, yes. I see. Callisto nodded and quietly lifted his hand from my hair. If so, then so it. His hand that was moving away felt as if this moment was forever. The moment when our eyes met each other. Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Someone's voice suddenly went in between us. Turning my head, I saw the Duke and Reynold, who had gone to pick his father up, were approaching. I greet the little son of the Empire. The time, which seemed to have stopped, flew quickly at a breath. Raise your head. The Crown Prince gave a clear order. And when he looked at them expressionlessly, he stiffened his face and smiled that fierce smile of courtesy. O long time no see, Duke. It is an infinite honor for you to attend our party in the midst of your business. You're the ambassador of a great help to me in the future. Of course I should come, the Crown Prince said, proudly raising his chin. The Duke's eyebrows wriggled once. I'd like to thank you more, but I'm sorry to say that we have to start the ceremony now, Your Highness. Oh, indeed, yeah, the one-time ceremony of the princess can't be delayed. The Crown Prince soon turned his head back to me and congratulated me casually. Happy birthday, Princess. Thank you, I responded with my eyes down. Soon he turned around and took a step to his designated seat. I didn't look at his flying red cape. When I looked up again, I was already sitting tightly at a table prepared for countless nobles. Now let's start the ceremony. Starting with the Duke's stern voice, the coming-of-age ceremony finally began. If you found the video enjoyable, would you consider recommending it to a friend? Please share what you found most memorable. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell for updates.